And welcome, guys. It's the first episode of the First Team Podcast here with Schiff and Derek.
Yes, sir. Yes,
And
sir.
we are here to take you through that. I don't really know how to describe it. It started off really bad. It was good for Niner fans, Giants fans, more similar to week one.
Absolutely.
Um, and let's start off with the Giants, unfortunately.
Yeah, Daniel Jones, 32 attempts, 22 completions, 137 yards, no touchdowns, an interception. Only rushed for 5 yards, put up a dismal 5 fantasy points. I mean,
It
week
was.
1, Daniel Jones was terrible. Week 2, Daniel Jones against the Cardinals did great. Maybe people had higher expectations, but Daniel Jones is Daniel Jones. Came back down to earth. I mean, 5 fantasy points is not going to do it.
Yeah, and I mean the reality of it is week one, they play the Cowboys. Can't run the ball. So it essentially takes Saquon out of the game. Week two, I guess they said Brian Dable was calling plays in the second half, and that's when things started picking up, but they're able to use Saquon.
Mm-hmm.
Week three, they don't have Saquon, and their offense is so one-dimensional. It's like I think Daniel Jones, I don't even remember him having many completions longer than like most of them were like, I mean, for example, Paris Campbell had 6 catches for 24 yards. And that's what felt like a lot of the game script was for the Giants. They couldn't go down the field, and it was just dump offs.
And that's what you see with a lot of the Giants receivers. I mean, Isaiah Hodgins last week against the Cardinals, 4 catches, 40 yards, and a touchdown. He had 1 target today, or yesterday. 1 target yesterday, no catches. They don't have anyone that can spread the field. No one that can go really downfield. And I mean, even if they did, can Daniel Jones even find him down the field?
And yeah, it was, I don't, just the variety of play calling was bad. I mean, there was a time they were down near their own. They had Daniel Bellinger blocking Nick Bosa and damn near got a safety for that. It was just like the scheme is bad. Everything looks bad in New York. I mean, okay, for example, they thought Jalen Hyatt, like they're going to have to take shots down the field. Jalen, he did not have a single target,
Mm-hmm.
played 32% of snaps without a single target. So without Saquon Barkley in that offense, with the exception of maybe Darren Waller, I'm staying away.
Absolutely. I mean, like you said, Saquon out this week. You bring in Matt Breida. For the people that had high expectations for Matt Breida, especially against the Niners, I mean, I hate to say it, but that's on you. Matt Breida had 4 carries for 17 yards. I mean, thankfully he had a touchdown if you did start him, because if he didn't, it was
Yeah.
abysmal. He had 3 catches for 1 yard, including his last catch where he lost 9 yards. If you took the over on his receiving, I'm sorry for you because he had it until that. I mean, he
That was sad.
he played 82% of snaps, finished with 10.8 fantasy points. You take away the 6 for the touchdown, he had 4.8 fantasy points. He did nothing.
And that he would have finished lower than Gary Brightwell, who also had a terrible. I mean, you're not going to run against the Niners defense for one.
No.
And then for two, I mean, the guy had 4 attempts for 5 yards, only played 18% of snaps, but he got 2 catches for 31 yards, which, like I said, would have put him above Breida if Breida didn't get that touchdown. But overall, it's, Saquon Barkley's out. That's not an offense that I want the backup running back necessarily. Like, give me Gus Edwards. I'll take Chuba Hubbard. It's
Absolutely.
just not a good look right now for the Giants. And they diagnosed Saquon with a high ankle sprain. So we could be missing him for another week or two.
Yeah, very well could. I mean, their one, not even bright spot, Darren Waller. He had, I mean, only 3 catches, 20 yards. He had 7 targets. So if you're a Darren Waller owner, you say, okay, well, at least he got 7 targets. But again, they could get nothing down the field. He only finished with 5 fantasy points, played 82% of the snaps. I just, It was the Niners, so it could be an overreaction, and it was the Cowboys week one.
Yeah,
These are two of, possibly two of the top three
the
defenses
premier
in the league.
defenses in the league.
But
Eh,
it's Darren Waller, who should be a premier tight end, and really couldn't even get anything to him either.
No, and that's the only thing I think, like, if you are a Darren Waller owner, you have that hope because he realistically, he's their number one target. He's their number one wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like Mark Andrews on the Ravens, except there is no Zay Flowers. There is no Odell. There's no Nelson Aguilar on that team, for
No.
crying out loud. So it's like those he's going to get good I mean, there's some bounced off his hands. Some of them weren't the best place, but you also got to remember the Niners have, if not the best, one of the best linebacking cores in football. So that's
Yeah.
going to make it a lot tougher for the tight end most weeks that they're playing. So Waller, got to keep kicking the tires with him. You drafted him for it. You know what the tight end landscape looks like. And other than that, I mean, hell, Graham Gano outscored almost I think he outscored every single Giant fantasy player besides Breida because he scored that touchdown with 9 fantasy points.
Yeah. Just a terrible week.
Yeah. So we're done with that dumpster fire. Moving on to the 49ers. Brock Purdy did not look too good to start the game. He was missing a lot of easy throws and honestly on the first drive had 3 near interceptions.
Yes.
But as the game went on, started to heat up a little bit, was getting his rhythm, finding Debo, finding Kittle, found Juwan Johnson a couple times, and the Niners ended up scoring 30 points. Looked like the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, and he had that pass to Debo was beautiful at the end. But Brock Purdy, fantasy wise, what you're relying on is his position players catching and creating.
Yeah.
He's not normally going to go 30, 40 yards downfield. He's going to throw, they had 3rd and 20 and he dumps off to Debo Samuel on a wide receiver screen behind the line of scrimmage and it's a first down. And it's just plays like that.
They call them the Yak Boys for a reason.
Yeah.
It's like, and it's no knock. I mean, you walk into the perfect system. You have some of the best play calling, the best offensive line, some of the best weapons. All you got to do is complete the pass, and they do the rest for you. So,
Yeah.
I mean, he's in a great position. He completed 25, 37 passes for 310 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, you love to see it. Didn't have the picks, almost did, but they're not on the stat sheet. And ended with 20.3 fantasy points, which, I mean,
It's a solid
we
week.
we can go back and forth on whether or not Brock Purdy's truly skilled. But with these weapons around him, as far as fantasy football goes, he is a relevant quarterback because they can get him those touchdowns.
Yeah, and without Ayuk this week, you saw Debo's targets skyrocket a little bit. He had 12 targets, caught 6 of them, 129 yards with the touchdown. He had 1 rush for only 2 yards. But Debo again had a great week. Finished with 25 fantasy points. Was out there 82% of the snaps, and he had a couple plays this week, especially that looked like what you'd expect from Debo. A couple plays where he's breaking 2-3 tackles, turning a 10 5-yard catch into 25 30 plus yards.
Yeah, and I know everyone's heart dropped on that play where he went down and the whole team's circling around him. We're like, oh God, not another one.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course, like 2 plays later, he scores a long touchdown in the Debo Samuel way. So
Yeah.
he's fine. You run Debo every week, just like the guy Christian McCaffrey, perennial RB1.
Yes.
I mean, the guy only played 61% of snaps this week and still got 22.9 fantasy points.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing bad you can say about the guy. Explosive as all hell. He's trucking. He's everything. I mean, he's healthy. He looks good. He's on maybe the best offense in the league.
Yeah.
You gotta love Christian McCaffrey. Not much more to say about that guy.
Yeah, and you saw Eli Mitchell get a little more usage this week. He played 34% of the snaps, had 11 carries, 42 yards, 3 catches for only 2 yards. I mean, Eli Mitchell's a tough one because he really didn't play those first 2 weeks. Do you roster him if you have McCaffrey? I would say so, in case he misses. If you don't have McCaffrey and you're in a deep league, yes. If it's not that deep of a league, I mean, I think there's other guys you could roster over him, but maybe he does start getting a little more usage, but it's looking like it's McCaffrey and more McCaffrey.
Oh, it's McCaffrey season, and I mean, he looks as healthy as he's been in the past few years. So, but on Eli Mitchell, Shanahan did say like we gotta work him in more, and they do because
Mm-hmm.
you want to like McCaffrey's a guy that you want later in the year, like you want him for a Super Bowl run, and Eli Mitchell's perfectly capable, so he's gonna start to get more run. How relevant that's going to be, like you said, if you're in a deeper league and you can afford to roster him, go ahead. But if you like are in need of a running back, go a
He's
different direction.
yeah, he's not the guy. Um,
And
how'd you feel about the guy Ronnie Bell catching a touchdown? He got played
yeah, that was a nice
47% of snaps.
surprise
Yeah.
because it started off. I mean, he made that nice tackle on special teams on that punt.
Mm-hmm.
He iced the guy. It was like, oh, this guy's gonna earn himself some playing time. Sure enough.
And that's what he did. He only 2 targets, but 2 targets, 2 catches, 24 yards, one of them in the red zone, and came down with it for a touchdown. I mean, finished 10.4 fantasy points. He's worth bringing up because he had a good week. When Ayuk comes back, more than likely Ronnie Bell's getting buried. And, I wouldn't. He's not worth rostering. He is worth the mention, though, because he did have a good game.
Yeah, and like I thought, like him and Jawan Jennings, I I'd ended up rostering Jawan Jennings in our best ball league just because it was like, Ayuk's out, he's gonna take that wide receiver 2 spot essentially.
Mm-hmm.
But with Ayuk being out, it kind of got spread around a little bit more like Ronnie Bell. Ronnie Bell got the 2 targets and Jennings got the 4 targets, kind of 6 targets. Ayuk, and then Debo gets the 12.
Yep.
So it's
Yep.
like there is no exact Ayuk replacement. They're going to spread the ball out just a little bit more if one of these guys misses. So if you have Debo, Kittle, or Ayuk, and one of the 3 misses, you can definitely count on an uptick in the amount of targets, catches, receiving yards, anything for the other 2 guys. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, after this, Ronnie Bell over Jawan Jennings, if one of those guys misses, is worth keeping on your radar.
I would agree with that. And really quick, just something to throw in. Jake Moody has
Oh
been
yeah,
amazing. He has
he's been
40
stellar.
fantasy points through 3 weeks. He's outscoring, I'm just throwing it out there. You think of guys like Darren Waller, people like that. Jake Moody has more fantasy points through 3 weeks than some of these guys. And
Yeah, because you see it sometimes the Niners get in the red zone and they falter a little bit.
and he has been there to pick. It's definitely an upgrade at that kicker position. They spent that super high draft pick on him, and I mean, so
It's
far it's
working
paid
out.
off.
It's working out. I mean, we saw with the years with Robbie Gould. Robbie Gould was consistently putting up fantasy points. Obviously, they draft a young. He's going to do the same thing. So I'm rolling with Jake Moody. I picked him up in our league. I'm super stoked.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, we got the Niners love and joy, George Kittle.
Absolutely.
Finally came out and had the spike week that George Kittle owners have been waiting for. He got seven catches on 9 targets for 90 yards, played 83% of snaps. I mean, you know what's going to happen with Kittle. He's on the field a lot, but they love using him to block because he's a hell of a blocker.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes you're just not going to get those spike weeks, but you just gotta keep kicking the tires on Kittle. That is a great offense, and it's the tight end landscape that we all know and hate. You are not going to get too many consistent like double-digit weeks out of your tight ends. So roll with George Kittle.
Absolutely. And you have a week that Ayuk misses, and we talked about how those targets got spread around, and you saw the spike in Debo. You saw it in Kittle. McCaffrey only played 60-something% of snaps, but when he played, how often were they using him? So it's, Ayuk was out. They relied on their big 3 other than Ayuk to carry the load, and that's what they did. Kittle had a great week.
Mm-hmm. And it was great to see for Niners fans. It was great to see. I'm a big Debo fan. See him repping my boy Debo today.
Mm-hmm.
You love to see that. And that's about all we have for that game, Giants fans. I'm very sorry. Your season is looking kind of bleak.
Yeah. So you want to segue into our buy low, sell high?
Sounds good to me. And I think we're going to start this off. And before we get into this, a disclaimer. We're not saying sell these guys at any cost. No. We mean sell high.
Mm-hmm.
We're saying sell high. So you got to go out and get some, like, for example, Puka Nacua. I'm not saying just get him off your team. I'm saying go out and get a guy who has performed at a high level over a larger sample size. Like, if you can go out, I've seen people get Jamar Chase,
Crazy.
AJ Brown, guys like that for Puka Nacua. And Puka might be great for the rest of the season, but your ceiling cannot get much higher. And granted, he hasn't had the touchdowns yet, but your ceiling still can't get much higher than 35 targets in 2 weeks.
That, I mean, I'd have to double check, but that has to be a record for a rookie wide receiver. 35 targets through 2 weeks for a rookie receiver. Someone that people didn't even really have him on a radar. He was not being drafted even in the deepest leagues. Puka Nacua was not being drafted. And when Cooper Kupp comes back,
Dynasty leagues he wasn't being drafted in.
No. And when Cooper Kupp comes back, that's where people start to think, how long is this Puka Nacua run going to go? He can be a solid wide receiver for the whole year, but it's just so unlikely that he continues at the pace he's continuing at.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, I don't want to put a cap on this man but people need to realize what he's done to this point is historic. That ceiling, a historic ceiling, you're never really going to get an opportunity to like get a higher value than this. And if you want to keep him for the year, by all means, go ahead. But like, for example, Tutu Atwell in the games that Puka has gotten those targets, Tutu Atwell has 17 targets through the first 2 games.
Mm-hmm.
So even if Cooper Kupp comes back and gets his Cooper Kupp targets, getting 8-9 targets a week from Puka Nacua is still going to be great. But like we said, it's not going to be averaging 15, 17 targets a week.
No, it's not. And moving in, the first guy on my sell high list, we're going to have Raheem Mostert. He has 3 touchdowns through the first 2 weeks. Obviously, Jeff Wilson's gone. He's going to stay the guy these first 4 weeks for certain. When Jeff Wilson comes back, we'll see how it looks. But how it looked last year was very close to 50-50. Raheem Mostert's your pass-catching back, so he has higher upside in full PPR. But a big thing for me, at least, is Raheem Mostert stayed healthy last year, playing in that super split backfield. But him as the guy and someone that you're relying on every single week, he just hasn't shown the durability to even last a full season. And as of now, I mean, he's outscoring guys like Derrick Henry. And when you look at that sustainability, do you really believe Raheem Mostert's going to stay a top 10 RB for the entire year?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. So you look at week 1, he had 10 carries for 37 yards against the Chargers. The Chargers don't really have a vaunted run defense.
Mm-hmm.
And he went off against the Patriots. Like that, I'm not trying to say that was an outlier, but I don't know how many games this season we're going to get 18 rushes in general out of Raheem Mostert. Like you're saying, he's 31 years old.
Mm-hmm.
They drafted the rookie Devon Achane. I mean, he might get worked in more as the season goes. Then another big reason why Raheem Mostert got a lot of work late in that game was because Waddle, near the end of that game, goes out with the concussion.
Yep.
And Christian Gonzalez was doing a hell of a job on Tyreek.
Yes.
So it's not like they were exactly forced to run the ball, but it suited where they were at in the game. And Raheem Mostert was just taking off. So granted, he might continue to do this, but it's one of those things, like his value might not be higher at any point in the season than it is right now.
Exactly.
And then with older running backs, that also that leads me into my next guy, who's James Conner.
Mm-hmm.
And James Conner, we love James Conner, volume king. He's the bell cow in Arizona, quite obviously. But he's also an older running back.
Yep.
How old is he? Let me see.
Is he 28, 29?
Yeah, he's 28.
Mm-hmm.
He has 37 carries through the first 2 weeks. This is another guy who, I mean, he's not injury prone. I don't like saying people are injury prone,
Mm-hmm.
but a 28-year-old running back that has 37, like, how you want to talk about sustainable? It's like, how long until, like, that's insane. That's insane usage. That's Derrick Henry usage. And we're even seeing Derrick Henry, like, they're giving Tyjae Spears more carries now.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just one thing. I mean, he's the RB13 through 2 weeks. And in his next 7 games, he has to go up against Dallas, San Francisco, Baltimore, and Cleveland. That is 4 super tough run defenses within the next 7 weeks. And 4 weeks that you might not get good production out of James Conner. So I think now is the best time to flip him if you can. Go out and get, if you can get like a James Cook, if you can go out and get Alvin Kamara, someone like that it's just, in the Cardinals, I don't think their offense is going to be good throughout the course of the year.
No, and they're going to just rely on James Conner until, it's just going to be tough.
Say it, but it's
going to be tough.
But you're like, the guy had 23 carries last week. Like,
yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah.
Wishing the best, but
absolutely.
If you can make the move, make the move.
And, switching completely from the older running back to the younger running back, Jerome Ford, prayers up for Nick Chubb, horrific injury, and Nick Chubb's one of the best backs in the game. But what Browns fans saw, and we all saw, is Jerome Ford come in and, at least for that game, pick up where Nick Chubb left off. He had a great game. Was he being used in the pass game, the run game? They went out and signed Kareem Hunt. Stefanski says it doesn't even matter. Jerome Ford's the leader in the backfield. And while I believe that, can he continue to perform how he just performed? Like Schiff had said, the point of this segment is sell high. Will Jerome Ford value ever be higher than it is right now, where you can probably go out, and if you don't have the running back depth, maybe you hold on to him? But if you do and you are able to just grab him on the waiver wire, he's definitely someone you could piece with another player and possibly get, an upper echelon player that is going to get you top points every week. So, I mean, he could continue it. Kareem maybe has something left in the tank. We don't know. It didn't look like it much last year. But, again, if you can sell him super high, I'd recommend to do so.
Yeah, because, I mean, it's one of those things where he might go up in value, but it's been said his, like, upcoming contests versus run defenses, it's kind of brutal. And he has Tennessee, the number 1 run defense, then Baltimore, who's been very good, and then a bye. So that's 3 weeks where it's like, after those 3 weeks, it's going to be a lot harder to trade him. Right now, his value is through the roof. And the same goes with my next guy, Kyren Williams.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to hold on to Kyren, I don't blame you at all. I'm saying if you can go out, because Kyren has 4 touchdowns through the first 2 weeks. That touchdowns are not a sticky stat, as everybody knows. Touchdowns vary more than anything else. And in week 1, he had 15 attempts for 52 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 targets, no receptions. Week 2, he had 10 targets and 6 receptions, 14 carries for 52 yards. I mean, he's getting bell cow usage, but if you can go out and get a guy like Tony Pollard, because Kyren Williams is the RB2 right now,
you do it. Absolutely.
You do it.
And it's another thing, they got rid of Cam Akers, so Kyron's the guy. We know he's going to be the guy there for this year at the very least. He's young. He should be durable. But again, it's kind of the same as Puka, Tutu Atwell. When Cooper Kupp comes back, everything's going to change in that offense. It's going to be the Cooper Kupp show. And can Kyron, his yards per carry haven't been the greatest. And like Schiff said, you're relying on touchdowns. I don't know how much you want to put into Kyron Williams scoring, 12 plus touchdowns on the season. So if you can sell him high.
Exactly, because that's through 2 weeks, Matt Stafford has 1 passing touchdown. Kyron Williams has 3 rushing touchdowns and 1 receiving touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
It's not Matt Stafford's looking good. It's not going to stay like that. Those passing touchdowns are going to start going to Puka, Tutu Atwell, Cooper Kupp when he gets back. Kyron's still going to be good, but like we're saying, this is as high as his value might get. Running back 2, come on. He's not going to stay the running back 2. You got to go out and get what you can for him now.
Yeah. And that goes to the next guy, Josh Reynolds on the Lions. He's having an amazing start. He's got 35 fantasy points for full PPR through 2 weeks. I mean, the Lions have a great offense. They really do. But when you look at all the weapons, you look at Laporta being integrated in more. Amon-Ra's dealing with a bit of injury, so that's adding to Josh Reynolds' value for right now.
Jahmyr Gibbs got the most targets on the Lions last week.
Yep, Jahmyr Gibbs most targets, and then you even think about Jameson Williams coming back after 6 weeks and how much stock they've put into him. You would assume they're gonna they're gonna integrate him. They're gonna throw his way. It's not saying go out and just dump Josh Reynolds, but again, he's another one of those receivers where he may be a bit higher in value right now than you're gonna see him at any point.
Yeah, and as far as Josh Reynolds, I might, just because Amon-Ra is dealing with turf toe this week and his usage might dip a little bit, I'd wait. Use Josh Reynolds if you have to this week. He's a good play, in my opinion. If you don't want to use him, go ahead. But I'd wait to trade him till after this week because I think he's going to have good usage this week with Amon-Ra being a little banged up. And then after that, make that flip.
Yeah, absolutely.
And another receiver like him who honestly had a crazy spike week was George Pickens.
Yes.
And I do like George Pickens, don't get me wrong. I would, if I had George Pickens, I don't know if I would trade him. But after the spike week he just had, and if you really take a look at the Steelers offense, they cannot protect Kenny Pickett. He, through 2 weeks, isn't looking the best, though. I mean, he played the Niners defense in week 1. Can't throw that away. It's, you got to play tough defenses, but it's like you're not going to play the Niners every week. Week 2, they played the Browns, another really tough defense, but that's kind of the thing. The AFC North is tough. So these are 5 more divisional games, tough divisional games he's going to have to play. And Deontay Johnson is going to come back. George Pickens got 17 targets in the first 2 weeks. And I think he got, let me see. I think he got more than 10 this past week. Yeah. When Deontay Johnson comes back, he's not going to be getting 10 plus target. Like, he's talented as all hell, but Deontay Johnson is a target hog. So it's like, if after that spike week, I genuinely don't know what the Steelers are going to do any given week. Maybe hold on this week because they're playing the Raiders. I know those are your boys, but their defense, they're a little suspect. So maybe hold on for this week, and if he has a good week.
And that's exactly what I was going to say. I mean, not exact situation as Josh Reynolds. He's on a more high-power offense, but George Pickens going against the Raiders defense, hate to say it, I mean, he's probably going to eat. He's probably going to have a solid week. So if it's someone you absolutely need to play this week and you really love his matchup, throw him in there. But again, when it's coming to value and you're looking to trade him, if he's going to be a bench player this week against the Raiders and you know it's a favorable matchup, maybe someone else will say, hey, he's playing the Raiders. He had a good week last week. I'll trade for him. And if you're not going to use him, I mean, this could be a really good week to trade him.
If you're not going to use him, you need a running back. If you're a Justin Fields owner and he's going up against the Chiefs this week, if you think you could pair him and get one of like the top 4 quarterbacks, something like that. Just if you're looking to upgrade, and or need an upgrade. That's what the sell high guys are for. If you are in need of a running back and you have Kyron Williams, James Conner, DeAndre Swift, we're not telling you to go trade. Like, you need to hold on to what you got. But if you have that option, if you have the like ability on your roster, if your roster's set up so that you can make that upgrade, you got to go do that. People aren't as aggressive with trades a lot of times as they should be.
Absolutely. And that's to our next guy. I have Hunter Henry with the Patriots. And this one, really quickly, if you have a top tight end, Travis Kelce, Andrews, Hawkinson, people still, if you're still high, Waller, Kittle, if you have one of those 5 and you were able to get Hunter Henry, you 1,000% move him with his value this high and with how tight ends have been playing. If you have one of the lower end guys and you want to hold Hunter Henry, absolutely do that. But he's already got 2 touchdowns through 2 weeks, the same amount as he had all of last year. And this is no knock to Hunter Henry. It's more so, how much do you believe in Mac Jones? How much do you think Mac Jones is going to be able to consistently throw the ball? And especially when you have, Hunter Henry seems like, one of the favorable targets, but you have all of these receivers right around the same skill set. Ramondre's even been struggling, and they're going to get him in the pass game also. It's how long do you think Hunter Henry is going to be getting 8 targets a game?
Exactly. And it's that, and like we said earlier, touchdowns are not a sticky stat. Like, those touchdowns very easily could go to Ramondre. Those touchdowns could very easily, like, I think him and like Devontae Parker's on the field 100% of the time. Some of those could start going to Devontae. So it's like, while Hunter Henry is a great red zone target, great tight end for 2 weeks, if you have that capability of, like, if you can flip him, do it. If you need a tight end, hold on to Hunter Henry.
Yep. Absolutely.
And then as far as that, like, the touchdown things go, another guy would be Jacoby Myers. He scored 2 touchdowns in week 1. Obviously, he was out week 2 with the concussion. But some of those things like that, it's like, I think he scored just as many touchdowns in week 1 with the Raiders as he did all his time with the Patriots.
Yeah.
Touchdowns are not a sticky stat. And while Jimmy G likes throwing him the ball, that's also something that you could use in trade talks to go and upgrade a receiver.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've seen, at least through 2 weeks, obviously Raider fan, watched every play. Hunter Renfrow is non-existent out there. We're paying him to run cardio. They have not thrown the ball to Michael Mayer. Austin Hooper.
Do they have what, like 1 target each?
Yeah, exactly. Renfrow, Austin Hooper, and Michael Mayer through 2 games have less targets and probably less receptions than Jacoby Myers through 1 week.
Yeah.
It looks like Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers are the 2 guys that Jimmy G loves throwing to. So if you can get Jacoby Myers, or if you can sell him high, absolutely. I mean, depends, he's worth holding on to if you absolutely need it. But again, if you're deep at wide receiver looking to upgrade another position, Jacoby Myers is the guy to do it.
Definitely. And then for sell highs, my last guy's DeAndre Swift, just because he had 31 total targets or 31 total touches in week 2. He ran for 175 yards. That was his career high. He's not going to get that many touches on a week-to-week basis, regardless. He'll still be good, but that is probably the ceiling. So it goes with the rest of them. When a guy hits their proverbial ceiling, that's when you go out and trade them. So sell high if you can. If you want to hold on to Swift because you need a running back, do that.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I mean, Swift is by far the most talented running back in that backfield, but the Eagles are weird. Jalen Hurts is going to steal those touchdowns. Kenneth Gainwell is going to come back and rush more times than he probably should. You're going to have Boston Scott randomly. At some point, I would assume Rashad Penny's going to get some type of run. Who knows? But like Schiff said, if you can move on from DeAndre and you don't need him and you can upgrade another position, you absolutely do that. I guess switching to our buy low, my first guy is going to be, our very own Josh Jacobs. He was
Mm,
absolutely fantastic last year, held out, and you're seeing it. I mean, week 2 against Buffalo, completely understandable. Week 1, Denver, it's he's not looked good. So I'd say Josh
yeah,
Jacobs owners are probably pretty low on him, but
especially after the week 1, you're like, okay, Denver has a good run defense, and then Antonio Gibson comes out and fucking crushes them.
yeah,
S-
Brian
That,
Robinson when
yeah,
saying yeah,
Brian
Brian
Robinson
Robinson.
comes out and crushes them. So
Yeah.
people are probably like, what's going on with Josh Jacobs?
Mhm.
It's like you said, you saw it with Lamar Jackson in week 1 against the Texans. You saw it with Joe Burrow. When you don't participate in camp in the preseason games and you don't have the ability to, or you choose not to, it's going to show in the regular season. And it might take him maybe another week or two. But Josh Jacobs, yeah, definitely agree with you.
Yeah, he's definitely a guy, you'd assume at some point sooner than later he's going to start getting it going, and when he does, I mean, we saw it last year. This is the same offensive line, if not upgraded a little bit more. I mean, there's no reason Josh Jacobs should continue doing how bad he's been doing.
No, no. And I mean, hey, if this is the week to do, we saw, granted, it was a big cutback run for 69 yards, but we saw Jerome Ford. Nick Chubb was eating that defense up. Josh Jacobs had more rushing yards than Nick Chubb last year. He definitely has the capability to go off against the Steelers defense. If you're going to go out and get him now,
Mhm.
right now.
Absolutely.
And then my guy, first running back on the buy low section is Alvin Kamara.
Mhm.
Perfect time. If there is a manager in your league 0-2 with Alvin Kamara, still got one more week till he comes back. The situation couldn't be better. Jamal Williams is out. They've got Tony Jones Jr. as their running back 1 right now because, like, Kendre Miller just finally logged his first practice.
Mhm.
People say Kendre might have the ability to overtake that backfield. Well, if he does, I think it'll take a while. And honestly, Alvin Kamara just suits Derek Carr's play style. I mean, we
Absolutely.
saw how many dump offs Josh Jacobs got last year. And what does Alvin Kamara happen to be besides one of the best receiving backs in the NFL? So it's
Yeah.
just a perfect timing. If you can go out and make that deal, like I said, it's 0-2 owner, 1-1 owner that might be struggling with running backs. You can go out, if you have James Conner, I wouldn't trade Kyron Williams for him, but there's a couple other, like Miles Sanders, maybe. There's if you can go out and get Alvin Kamara for when he comes back, I think he's going to be a home run hitter.
I'd
Could be a
absolutely.
league winning trade.
Yeah, I'd absolutely agree with that. I know, the Saints played the Titans week 1. We mentioned how good the Titans run defense is, but the normal fantasy owner is seeing Jamal Williams struggle. He didn't have the greatest game. He's hurt. I mean, he's probably going to come back, but you have Tony Jones and Kendre Miller. It's going to be a bad week for Saints running backs. It is not going to be a good week. And before that happens is when you should get Alvin Kamara. Don't wait until they have that terrible week and everyone's saying, okay, well, when Alvin comes back, he's going to be that guy. He's obviously still got juice in the tank. He's got Derek Carr, the drop off merchant. I mean, he loves to do it. I 100% agree. If you can get Kamara, you go get him. And that kind of
100%.
that kind of goes another pass catching back, kind of not in a similar situation, but I mean, Jalen Warren. Najee has looked slow,
Buns.
slower than your 7th grade PE teacher. I mean, he looks bad, and the Steelers' run game as a whole has looked terrible. The one bright spot is at least when Jalen Warren's in there, he's looking like he has pop. And through week 1 to week 2, Jalen Warren's starting to get more involved in the offense. He's getting more targets. He's that pass catching back, and when you're full PPR, I mean, that's exactly what you're looking for. And unless something drastic changes, I think that's just going to continue. You're eventually going to see Jalen Warren. I don't want to say it, but he's probably going to get over that 50% snap count at some point.
Oh yeah, I mean it's the thing with Najee. His rookie year was Big Ben had a noodle arm, so it was dump off, dump off, dump off, and
Mm-hmm.
Najee was loved for his pass catching. Well, now it's like, what is Jalen Warren doing? Catching passes in space and looking explosive, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what we loved Najee Harris for. So it's like the guy who we loved is getting overtaken from a guy who's doing the same thing that we loved this guy for.
Yep.
So it's like you can't just ignore it. And a lot of people are, it's like, oh, they're still gonna like look at the line, this and that. There were two runs that Jalen Warren had late in that game, two 5-yard runs that I don't know. I think it was in the fourth quarter, but same offensive line that not Najee's getting stonewalled every time. And Jalen Warren's able to run through the line for 5 yards, get a first down. And it's just scary. I mean, you're not seeing much positive rushing yardage out of that team at all.
Mm-hmm.
And Najee had a couple positive plays, but unless he's open with no one around him, he's not getting much positive yardage. Jalen Warren.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, on to the next young running back, also a pass catcher. I was going to go Travis Etienne, but I feel like Travis Etienne, being in the offense he just had one. It was a pretty bad week. The Chiefs' defense with Chris Jones back is looking really good, and he was dealing with cramps, so he was in and out of that game a lot. If you can go out and buy Travis Etienne low, I would. I don't think it'd be as easy as the guy I'm going to talk about, Jahmyr Gibbs, because Jahmyr Gibbs has only had 7 carries in each of the first 2 games, which a lot of people don't like. A lot of people aren't going to like that when David Montgomery went out, he didn't get that uptick in carries. Craig Reynolds came in and got those carries.
Mm-hmm.
But people who drafted Jahmyr Gibbs, if they didn't draft him realizing that that's not what Nick Saban didn't use him like that at Alabama. I think they said he only got an under double digits in like goal line carries at Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
It's never been what he's used for. He's that Alvin Kamara style type of, but he's the pass catcher. He got the most targets, like we said earlier, on the Lions last week. He got 9 targets. That's what Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be used for. So if there's disgruntled owners in your league, like, oh, they're not running the ball, he's not getting the volume. That's okay. That's not what we want. We don't want him running between the tackles. We want him getting those juicy RB targets. That's what's going to put him over that line. So if you can go out and get, especially like with David Montgomery's out right now, so he's going to get more snaps, maybe not more carries. I mean, you're not going to expect the guy to get like around 20 carries, but if he can get like 8-9 catches a game, please give me that.
Yeah, and that's 100% agree with what Schiff said, and he's going to be that back out of the backfield that's getting all the receptions. David Montgomery's really not going to be that guy. Craig Reynolds isn't going to be that guy. And as the season goes on, and if the Lions do show that they're in a playoff contention, that's where you're going to keep seeing Jahmyr Gibbs getting leaned on more. And that ties in also, a sell high was Josh Reynolds. Those receptions are going to go to Jahmyr more and more. I would not be surprised if at the end of the year, behind Amon-Ra in targets, it was Jahmyr Gibbs. It very well could be. So, I mean, if you can go out and buy him, absolutely do it. Some owners are probably still going to be high on him, but others, that don't have the patience to wait around for him to become that guy for them, he's 100% a guy you should target.
Yeah, I mean, like genuinely, like a couple guys on our sell high list, like James Conner, DeAndre Swift, Jerome Ford. If you could take one of those guys and go and get Jahmyr Gibbs, the guy who's going to consistently get a lot of targets in a high-powered offense, that's something that you should 100% go do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I got one more for this. I see we're moving along here, and I want to make sure we got time to cover all the Sunday games.
Yeah.
So last guy is going to be Pat Freiermuth, only because of how low he is right now. I mean, he finished with 90 plus targets last year. He was one of Kenny Pickett's favorites in the red zone. It's crazy to see him with this low of targets through the first 2 weeks, and I'm not saying, go out and give up anything worth, anyone worth rostering for him. But I think at this point, fantasy owners that have him are probably either just dropping him or they're ready to move on from him for a very small piece. And if you have one of those lower end tight ends, I'd think Freiermuth is at least worth rostering. I wouldn't start him until you can see him start having some viable games. But I definitely think he's someone that's going to start getting those targets, get back to normal through this season.
Yeah, me personally, I moved on from Freiermuth. I picked up Laporta.
That's a good pickup, though.
Yeah, I think Laporta's in a better offense, but Freiermuth is a guy that the target tree, I don't know that Allen Robinson is going to continue getting a lot of targets throughout the year.
Yeah.
Who knows? Calvin Austin might eat into it this year, but Pat Freiermuth's targets should go up. I mean, he only, what does he have, 3 through the first 2 weeks?
And one of them was a catch for a touchdown. Yeah.
One of them was a catch for a touchdown. He only has 2 catches through the first 2 weeks. So, I mean, you'll be able to, if you trade for him, you'll be able to get him for pennies. If you pick him up off the waiver, I don't think you're going to have much competition with that.
Yeah.
And then my last guy in this, I had a couple more guys, A.J. Brown. I mean, that's obvious enough after the last game.
Yeah.
But he's still getting over 90% of snaps each week. So hold on with A.J. Brown. The Eagles defense is not what it was last year. They're going to have to pass to stay in games. Javonte Williams, another guy who, I mean, he's coming off of a gruesome injury. So I don't know that anybody really thought he was even going. He played in preseason and everybody thought that was incredible. So he's just going to keep ramping up. As the season goes on, and that Broncos offense is a lot better than it was last year. So he's going to have touchdown opportunities. And then finally, Brandon Ayuk, especially because of the spike week that Debo and George Kittle just had. A lot of people might see that and get a little spooked. Brandon Ayuk only played 53% of the snaps in week 2 due to the AC sprain, and he still got 6 targets in that game, being in and out of that game. Their next matchups are Arizona, Dallas, Cleveland, Minnesota, and Cincinnati before the bye. All teams that can be passed on, especially prayers up for him. But with Dallas just losing Trayvon Diggs, that's very big. And Cleveland's got a good run defense. Minnesota, we saw what, they've been giving up through the air consistently.
Yeah.
And then Cincinnati, I mean, Nelson Aguilar just had a good day against them.
Yeah.
So definitely go out if you can find an Ayuk manager that it could, he had a decently bad week in week 2 because of the AC sprain, and he didn't play this week. So if you could go out and get him, do that.
Yeah. And no, 100%.
That'll lead us into the Sunday previews.
Yeah, Sunday previews, and we're going to run through these really quick. I want to mention now, if you have, any questions, who should you start in fantasy? What are our thoughts on this guy? And any more in-depth questions than we go into right here, feel free to drop a comment. We'll respond to them before the Sunday games. This video is going to go up Friday, so you'll be able to see it. We'll be able to see it plenty ahead of time, and we're more than willing, to take any questions, give our opinions on whatever you guys want.
Yes, indeed.
First game's Denver-Miami. Playing in Miami, who's also the 6.5-point favorite. Denver's offense has shown a little bit of flashes. They played better against they played better against the Commanders than they did the Raiders, and we know the Raiders have a terrible defense. Marvin Mims is a guy you can watch out for. He's showing some flashes, especially deep. You have Jerry Jeudy there, who, depending if you're playing 3 receiver, 2 receiver, I don't know if I would start him just yet, but I mean, he's definitely a good receiver. Courtland Sutton, he's looking like the wide receiver 3. I don't think he has much left in him at this point, but he could prove me wrong. As Schiff mentioned, Javonte Williams, I think they're going to continue ramping him up. And it's weird that they brought in Pirine when Javonte's plenty capable catching out the backfield, and he's just younger and more explosive than Pirine. So I'm high on Javonte this week. Russ, I'm not starting Russ until he throws. He's got to give me 3-4 consistent games before I even think about starting him fantasy-wise. On On the other side, Tua, if he's without Waddle this week, that's going to be a tough start fantasy-wise for him. Tyreek owners, obviously full go. Surtain's a great corner, but it's Tyreek. He's going to eat no matter what. Raheem
He'll
Mostert's
find a way to
probably,
get open.
yeah, he will definitely get open. Raheem Mostert is going to have a solid week. I don't think a chain's going to be used a crazy amount just yet, but he may get more touches this week. Um, and as any other fill-in for Jalen Waddle, I'm not starting any other Dolphins player, any other wide receiver, any other tight end. I'm starting Mostert. I'm starting Tyreek. Depends how high on Tua you are. I'm starting Tua. Other than that, I'm staying away from anyone else on that team.
Yeah, and just to touch on the Broncos, I mean, as far as Jerry Jeudy, he's coming off of that injury. He continue ramping up probably every week. This week against Miami, I mean, if you got to start him, I like the matchup.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, it's still a matter of whether or not he's fully, but he's starting to get back into his role, and seeing that Russ is able to actually complete the deep ball. It's looking better for Jerry Jeudy.
Yeah.
Going on to the next game, we have the Patriots at the Jets, giving us our lowest implied point total of the week at 36.5. Pats are 2.5-point favorites. I mean, we watched this game last year. I think, what was it, 3-3 or something until the Pats won on a punt return touchdown?
Yeah.
I'm not saying we're going to have an exact repeat of that, but in a game where we have two very good defenses, one very bad offense, and one mediocre offense, I don't see a lot of points being scored. I mean, if you have Hunter Henry, you're starting him. If you have Garrett Wilson, you're starting him with a prayer.
Yes.
I genuinely don't like I mean, I want to say I don't like Breece Hall and Dalvin Cook too much, but Raheem Mostert was able to put up a whole bunch of yards on that Patriots defense. And for the Jets offense, for me, it's just like the running back. They showed last week that if they get down quick and down a lot, the running backs are not going to see touches.
Mm-hmm.
Breece Hall got 4 carries last week, and they're not going to play the Dallas defense every week. But that's just a possibility that if they get down quick and down big, the running backs are going to just lose any viability fantasy-wise in that game. Dalvin Cook had a horrible game. Breece Hall had a horrible game against the Cowboys.
Mm-hmm.
Garrett Wilson, he's startable just because of his freak athletic ability to make plays. He has that opportunity to break off. I mean, he did it in both of the first 2 weeks, broke long touchdowns, and that's what he's good at. But you have to keep in mind that his ceiling is 100% capped by Garrett Wilson. And that's about all I got for that game. Patriots side of the ball, you're starting Mondre, you're starting Hunter Henry, you're starting nobody else.
Yeah, I'd 100% agree with that. Only other thing, if you want to start the Patriots defense and roll the dice, I'd say that can be a viable start for sure. The Jets defense, yeah, they should get sacks, possibly create a turnover. They should have a solid game. And honestly, depending how high you're on the Jets defense, they've looked really good too. If you want to start the Jets defense, I wouldn't hate you for it. It's the only thing I'm going to say. Either of those defenses
are good to start, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of takes us into our next game, Texans and Jaguars in Jacksonville, who are the 8.5-point favorites. CJ Stroud, does he lead the league in yards?
I do believe so, yes.
That is impressive, to say the least. The Texans offense, surprisingly, CJ Stroud, I mean, not a guy I'm starting fantasy just yet. Dameon Pierce has looked nowhere near how he looked last year, and I know he's coming off injury, and that could be playing a factor.
It's no fault to him entirely, because their offensive line is depleted entirely.
Yeah, but their receivers are actually getting things done. Nico Collins, if you want to start him, it's going to not hurt me to say this, but surprise me, I'd say start him. Nico Collins is getting targets. He's getting a lot of targets, and he's actually been successful. And when your wide receiver core is Tank Dell, Robert Woods, and Nico Collins, and they're all three kind of feasting, if I'm a Texans fan, there's at least hope.
Yeah, I mean, they drafted Tank Dell, and him and CJ Stroud have become like best friends. I only see him going up.
Yep.
Robert Woods, we all know the talent of Robert Woods.
Mm-hmm.
After he got traded from the Rams, obviously he went to the Titans, and we see what that's even doing to DeAndre Hopkins. So we all
Yep.
kind of forgot about Robert Woods. Still a skilled receiver. And then, yeah, Nico Collins is eating. So, and it's like we said, that offensive line cannot run block right now. And maybe when they get guys back, it'll start looking a little different, but they can't run. So they have to pass. And especially they get down and they get in these, positions where they're down multiple scores, they're chucking that ball. And
Mm-hmm.
CJ's pretty accurate.
Yeah.
Love the Texans pass catchers, honestly.
Absolutely. I'm loving all of them, except for, and surprising me because I thought he would be better there, Dalton Schultz, man, has not been what I thought he would be.
Man.
He's not a guy I'm starting. I think there's plenty of other tight ends out there right now. But I mean, like Schiff said, the Texans wide receivers are actually pretty surprising. And it's kind of the opposite with the Jaguars, especially in this matchup. I'm starting just about every person on the Jaguars offense if I have them. I'm starting Trevor Lawrence. I'm starting ETN, Ridley, Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram. Depends how deep the league is. I mean, Zay Jones, I wouldn't necessarily start him, but I wouldn't absolutely hate you. I want to say, is he coming off? Is he a little banged up coming into this week, or am I just off on that?
We're talking Zay Jones.
Yeah.
Zay Jones didn't practice a couple times this week. I don't know if he's still questionable, so I don't know if he's going to play.
Yeah, so I mean, okay, with that being said, even if he does play, I mean, it depends what your receiver room, how deep the league is. If it's 12 man, things like that, he can possibly be a play. But if he does not play, I'm liking all the position players even more. Evan Ingram, Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk, ETN, Trevor Lawrence. I'm loving all of them. So I mean, I think especially after last week with how the Jags offense performed, I think you're going to see a bounce back week. And I don't want to say it, but I see the Jaguars winning this one pretty big. And I see some explosions on that offense.
Yeah, Zay Jones didn't practice yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
He has yet to practice this week. It's not looking very good. We saw what happened when Christian Kirk had, more opportunity with Zay Jones being in and out of the game. So him being out entirely, Christian Kirk is like a must start this week.
Yes.
And the Texans of this year are not the Texans of last year, where every time you had to play receivers and quarterbacks against the Texans, you're kind of grimacing and seeing like, who else do I have? This year, they are capable of putting up those points on the back, and they're moving the ball. So the offense, they can't just remain stagnant and consistently run the clock out. They have to score on the Texans now, which is nice to see. Because last year, like I said, it was like, you had a quarterback against the Texans. Trevor Lawrence had like 7 points in a game that they handily beat the Texans last year.
Yeah.
And that one, moving on to their AFC South divisional rival, the Titans, playing at the Browns, which is another should be possible snooze fest. Because Deshaun Watson has not looked good. I mean, if there's a week, this is the week. Because the Browns aren't going to be able to run the ball like they want to against Tennessee. Tennessee's the number one rush defense. They've been good against the rush for these past few years. It's nothing new. This game is a game that I could say I'm confident starting Deshaun Watson because they have to pass.
Yep.
Otherwise, I don't know. But Amari Cooper, great start this week. If you have Elijah Moore and are questionable at receiver, I'd throw him in this week. David Njoku is probably a go this week. The pass catchers are going to be good. The thing I'm curious to see is, we know Kareem Hunt was kind of the pass catching back for the Browns. It's also what Jerome Ford is very skilled at doing, and also a lot faster than Kareem Hunt. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how that works out, how those third downs work out. But on the Titans side of the ball, you got Derrick Henry, You got Derrick Henry. I mean, honestly, the Browns have a good defense all around. They have a good pass defense. I don't know if D-Hop's playing or not. He's been questionable all week, still dealing with that ankle. And then it would be Treylon Burks. And it's like, if you have no other options and D-Hop's not playing, go ahead and throw in Treylon Burks. Otherwise, Tennessee's offense isn't something aside from Derrick Henry that I really want a part of.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I think actually kind of a sneaky play this week, especially if D-Hop doesn't play, could possibly be the Browns defense.
Yeah.
I don't see Tannehill doing much. He's probably going to throw at least a pick. I can see him fumbling on a sack. I mean, the Browns definitely should win this game. It's definitely a game the Browns should win. Like you said, Amari Cooper got me, along with every other fantasy owner that thought he was not going to play because reports came out he wasn't going to play Monday night.
Report.
And then he comes out and he looks great. He had a tough week 1, but he bounced back week 2. I mean, yeah, out of anyone on that Browns offense, Amari Cooper is for sure your must play. Njoku's good, like Schiff said, he's going to have a good week. I mean, you're only in a weird spot if you have to play Jerome Ford because you're thin at running back and you either spent a lot or used your waiver claim on him, and you're in this weird spot where, if it was Nick Chubb against the Titans, you're 1,000% playing him.
Yeah, you have no choice. And when it's Jerome Ford, it's like you're praying for, I mean, hopefully in your sake, you're in a PPR league and you're praying for those receptions, because otherwise it's going to be a bleak fantasy week for that Cleveland running back room.
Yeah. And that takes us right into the Falcons at the Lions in Detroit. Lions are a 3-point favorite. And, I almost feel like the Lions should be more than that, but I know the Falcons have actually been playing some really good football. Not completely due to their offense, other than their run game. The Lions don't have a crazy good secondary. So if you're looking at
just lost CJ Gardner-Johnson too.
Exactly. So if you're looking at Desmond Ridder, obviously not starting Desmond Ridder. Obviously starting Bijan Robinson. Tyler Algier, I'm probably keeping him on the bench, but I'm keeping him rostered. I'd say Drake London.
Situations where if you are struggling at running back, I like getting Tyler Algier in there.
Yeah.
If you are struggling at running back this week, don't hesitate on Tyler Algier because they do give him the volume.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Drake London had a bounce back week this past week. I would start him this week. I think he should have a solid week. It's the Lions. If Desmond Ridder can't get him the ball against Detroit, I mean, we'll just have to see. But, I mean, that segues right into Kyle Pitts. Again, year after year, Kyle Pitts is talented. At least I think at this point, right? I mean, everyone's like, this guy is crazy talented. The Falcons are holding him back. But how long are the Falcons going to hold him back? How come they can't get Kyle Pitts the ball on a consistent basis?
Yeah. I mean, at this point, it's looking at the Atlanta passing attack. Mac Hollins is their leading wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as at least Kyle Pitts, that tells me all I need to know. I mean, they're out there throwing the ball. I think Jonnu Smith might have more catches than him.
Don't even tell me that. Don't even tell me that.
So it's, I mean, you all, if I haven't drafted him because I'm over it.
Mm-hmm.
And I know who Arthur Smith is. But if you took the chance on the talent, I don't know if I'd drop him, I guess, just because, I mean, I don't know, man. It's at the point where I just don't see it in the cards. Like, maybe there will be a spike week here and there, but you're just settling for close to nothing every week.
Yeah.
So I'm at the point where I'd move on from Kyle Pitts.
Yeah. And on the other side, you have the Lions. Jared Goff, I mean, if you're in a 12-man, I could see you starting him. In a 10-man, I would say there's probably 10 better options for him this week. Jahmyr Gibbs, definitely keeping him in the lineup, especially if David Montgomery does not go. Even if David Montgomery does go, Jameer's in the lineup. Amon-Ra, if he plays, you're playing him. There's no way you can keep him on the bench. If he does not play, Josh Reynolds is a must start. If he does play, I mean, Josh Reynolds can still be a flex play. I'd even still keep him in. I'd say Josh Reynolds is a
Yeah.
start this week no matter what. Sam Laporta, absolutely starting him. He's shown
Yeah.
he's shown for the rookie tight ends. I mean, even more than Kincaid, he's just involved. They are using Laporta, and Laporta doesn't have he has Brock Wright compared to Dawson Knox, who I mean the Bills have run more two tight end, but Laporta has shown he's gonna be the guy there. At least at the tight end position, he's definitely worth starting.
Yeah, I mean, he's got 10 catches on 11 targets through 2 weeks. He's got 83 and 82% snap. Like,
Mm-hmm.
he's on the field. He's got 8.9 and 11.3 points week 1 and 2. That, I mean, that is as solid gets at the tight end position. Like, we're talking about Kyle Pitts. If you have the opportunity to pivot to Sam Laporta,
Do it.
please.
Do it.
Please.
Yeah.
For your own sake and for my mental stability too. Like, please, I beg of you. And then if that's all you got for that one, the next one we got Saints at Packers. Packers are the 1.5 favorites. The over-under is 42.5. This one should be interesting because, we haven't seen a lot of the things that we really wanted to out of this Saints offense yet with Derek Carr. I mean, he's 2-0. He's thrown some good you're not disappointed if you have Michael Thomas, if you have Rashid Shaheed, if you have Chris Olave, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, it's just one of those ones. It's like, where good are that? I don't know yet. They played the Titans, who I don't think too much of, and the Panthers.
Mm-hmm.
So they're 2-0. And this week they get the Packers at Lambeau. I'm starting Michael Thomas. I'm starting Chris Olave. If you're in a tough position, I have no issue whatsoever with starting Rashid Shaheed and Taysom Hill. If you need that, I mean, he got 75 yards on the ground last week. They don't have Jamal Williams this week. A lot of people are looking at Tony Jones and Kendre Miller. In reality, they're going to do a lot of running the ball with Taysom Hill. So, hell, if you want to throw Taysom Hill in your tight end position, he's going to get some rush yards. He might end up with a touchdown that could end up winning you your week. But their other tight end, Jawan Johnson, has been disappointing so far. I'd personally move on from him if you have that opportunity.
Yeah, and Rashid Shaheed is kind of playing that super deep threat for them that Derek Carr's actually been able to find. So like Schiff said, if you want to roll the dice on a Rashid Shaheed, 40, 50-yard touchdown, I'd say roll it because he's out there, he's getting targets, and I mean, at least through the first 2 weeks, it looks like nothing's going to change. Looks like he's going to be out there.
Yeah, and I'd feel more comfortable. And like I said, this is if you're in deeper leagues.
Yeah,
Otherwise, you're
12-man
probably
leagues.
not gonna have to start Rashid Shaheed. But I'd be more comfortable starting him than a few other, like maybe Romeo Dobbs.
Yeah.
Like Jaden Reed, just guys like that where you don't at least the first 2 games, Derek Carr in each has taken a deep shot to Sheed, and he got it. So it's like something that you can almost count on as compared to other guys who've had spike weeks due to touchdowns.
Yeah.
Which leads me to the Packers side of the ball with Romeo Dobbs and Jaden Reed. Again, 3rd week in a row, we don't know whether or not Christian Watson's going to be playing. He's questionable, as is Aaron Jones. If you have Aaron Jones and he's playing, play him. If you have Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon and Aaron Jones is not playing, I would look to go somewhere else for the running back position.
Yep.
They stonewalled Miles Sanders last week, and AJ Dillon really just has not looked explosive at all. He's not really getting the pass catching work. As far as the receivers, if Christian Watson doesn't play, I do like Dobbs and Jaden Reed, but it's just like take it with a grain of salt because their good weeks have come through touchdowns. Jaden Reed had 2 touchdowns last week. So it's like one thing that, and I think he only played like 53 or so percent of snaps, 43. So it's like these are guys that you're not going to be able to count on for consistency. They're big play threats, touchdown threats. And if you don't get them, you're going to be disappointed. So that's all I really got to say about the Green Bay side of the ball. Aside, I don't know if I'd start Jordan Love this week.
Yeah, and I was gonna chime in. He's got a lot of fantasy points. People are looking at the touchdowns he's thrown. The thing with Jordan Love is he's thrown the touchdowns so far, but he's also completing 52% of his passes. And with a defense like the Saints, they're gonna make you pay if you're not hitting your target. He hasn't thrown an interception yet, and I think he throws one.
The Packers are not going to have Bakhtiari this week.
Yeah.
So that's going to be even more pressure on Jordan Love. And yeah, the thing, like you said, Jordan Love, he's looked good, but that's because there has not been one running back touchdown on the ground yet this year. So that's also worth noting.
Yeah.
And that's about all I got for that game, honestly. If you want to take a chance on the Saints defense, knowing that Bakhtiari's out and how they've shut down the run, they'll probably end up getting to Love a few times. Other than that, that's all I got for that game.
Yeah, and that takes us right in to the Bills at the Commanders in DC. Bills 6.5-point favorites. I mean, we're gonna see, and the Broncos have a good defense, but the Bills being proven at least, serious playoff contenders year after year. We're gonna see how good that Commanders offense really is this week. I think this is gonna be a real test for them. Obvious start Josh Allen, obvious start James Cook, Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis even. I mean, Gabe Davis depends how deep your wide receiver room is, but I mean, I do like Gabe Davis. I'm kind of holding off on starting Kincaid or Dawson Knox, at least for this week. I don't know how you feel about that.
I believe Dawson Knox didn't practice yesterday.
Okay,
so that's a huge boost for Kincaid.
Yeah, if Knox does not play, then I can see you putting Kincaid into the lineup. Yeah, absolutely. Even the Bills' defense, if you drafted them, you have to start them this week. You just have to. Going to the Commanders, Sam Howell, he's looked good. I'm not starting him fantasy wise. Brian Robinson, I feel like you almost have to start him in a weird way.
He's getting so much volume, and he's looking good.
Yeah.
He's completely taken that backfield over.
Yeah. I'd say, you have to start Brian Robinson. Antonio Gibson, I mean, he's clinging to your roster at this point because you probably drafted him thinking he was going to do something and you don't just want to drop him. But honestly, if he doesn't do anything this week, that might be a guy you think about letting go. Terry McLaurin, he's an obvious start. You have to roll Scary Terry. Jahan Dotson, depending how deep the league is, I'd probably leave him off. But
yeah, Jahan Dotson's a guy that I'm still kind of waiting on. Not dropping him by any means. Kind of waiting to see how things play out there.
Yeah, and I mean, Logan Thomas, I actually really like Logan Thomas. He is very, he struggles to stay on the field for more than 8-9 games a season, but I really like Logan Thomas. Depending how he's playing the Bills. I probably wouldn't roll Logan Thomas this week, but he's looked good the first 2 weeks, so he's a name to keep an eye on. If the tight ends as a whole keep struggling how they are, I mean, he's at least getting the snaps and somewhat volume at the tight end position.
Oh yeah, I mean, and he's a Zach Ertz type. He's the old man, reliable tight end that's gonna get targets when he's on the field. Question is just, is he going to be on the field?
Yeah.
I mean, as far as just to touch on a couple of things on this game, Gabe Davis, a guy who he's someone, in my opinion, you can it was funny. Adrian brought to my attention that he has not the past like 3 games against the Jets, he's just had poor performances. So maybe
Mm-hmm.
that's just like when he plays the Jets, just don't start him. Otherwise, he's kind of a week in, week out starter for me because I mean, I heard through camp they were saying he's catching everything. He's not a guy that's going to goose you on any given week. He's going to get targets,
Mm-hmm.
and on his big weeks, it's like a better version of like George Pickens or the Jaden Reed, or when
Yep.
the touchdowns come, they will be like he's going to have a great week.
Yep.
He's going to have some bad weeks, but the volume will at least be there because he's a trusted wide receiver.
Yeah.
Whereas some of these other guys, it'll vary a little more.
Yeah, I agree with that. But that's all I had for that game, unless you had some to add more.
No, I mean, that's about it. We'll see how good this Commanders defense or Commanders offense really is this week.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of offenses, we have 2 of the best who happen to both be 0-2. One of them will be 0-3 at the end of this week. The Chargers at the Vikings. The Vikings are 1-point favorites, and we have a 54-point implied point total.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a game, honest to God, you are starting anybody.
Everyone.
If you got Josh Kelly,
He's
if
in.
Eckler's not playing, you're starting Josh Kelly.
Mm-hmm.
You got Mike Williams, you got Keenan Allen, obviously you're starting Justin Herbert. Gerald Everett is somewhat of a question. They've
Backed away from him a little bit.
They've thrown him to Parham more than Gerald Everett.
Yeah.
That's one of the, it's like at the tight end position, a guy like Gerald Everett, he's not worth holding on to. It's like there are guys who are every week going out and earning large target shares. So Gerald Everett, you can move on from him. I wouldn't start him this week, but the other, I mean, at him and Quentin Johnston, not starting Quentin Johnston this week. He's a guy I'm still.
It's
I
hard
don't
to
know
let him
whether or
go.
not I drop him, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
because he's a guy who, I mean, genuinely, and we've seen every year Keenan Allen, Eckler, and Mike Williams get hurt.
Yep.
So if one of those 2 receivers gets hurt, he steps into that role, and that could be huge. But as of right now, I'm staying away from him. And we go to the other side of the ball. I want to say I'm starting Madison this week if I have Madison, because the Chargers have just not had a good run defense.
Mm-hmm.
So if there is a week you can start Alexander Madison comfortably, this is the one.
Agreed.
And you just hope and obviously you're starting Justin Jefferson, you're starting Kirk Cousins, and you're starting Jordan Addison, in my opinion.
Yep. And Hawkinson. Absolutely.
Oh, Hawkinson, yeah, definitely the hockey boy. That he's gonna go off.
And you'd think Madison should be coming with a little extra fire this week, especially with them going out and getting Cam Akers. I mean, if anything could light that fire in Madison, and you're playing the Chargers, I say yeah. I say you roll.
Because he had Ty Chandler behind him. Now he has Cam Akers. And me being honest, I think Cam Akers is a more talented back than Alexander Madison.
Yep.
He's a back who's in playoff games had the running back 1 role, who is used to carrying that load. And Madison just doesn't look the part for me. If you have the opportunity to go and pick up and stash Cam Akers in a league, you have a spot for him, I'd definitely do that. I went and did that in one of the leagues I'm in right now. But yeah, other than that, that's a game that I definitely want players in. If you have them, roll them and hope for the best. And that's really all I got for that game.
Yeah, 100%. Do not even think about running a defense from that team, from either of those teams.
Please.
One last thing, Cameron Dicker for the Chargers. I've liked him a lot. I mean, depends who your kicker is, but that's someone to keep a lookout for. Just throwing that one out there. Next game, the Colts at the Ravens in Baltimore. Schiff's favorite team, the Ravens. The Colts, without Anthony Richardson, Gardner Minshew is not terrible. I'm going to say that. He is one of the better backups. But, I mean, by no means, Ravens are an 8-point favorite. By no means do I think the Colts are even going to win this game or even seriously compete in it. If I'm starting anyone on the Colts, I would roll Michael Pittman just because it's Michael Pittman, but not Minshew, obviously. Zach Moss, I mean, He's getting
Zach,
volume.
if you're in a position where, he's your running back 2, or if you're running back this week, you have like Rashad White against the Eagles.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, chances are with the volume they get, if they get down to the also score, you just saw Matt Breida fall into the end zone against the Niners. Anything's possible when you're getting that amount of volume. Anything is possible. So it's like you almost have to roll Zach Moss just because you're not in a Jerome Ford situation where they're playing a really good run defense and you have a guy behind him. There's nobody behind Zach Moss that they're going
Yeah.
to get the ball.
Yeah. 100%
They're done
agree.
with Deion Jackson.
Evan
So
Hull doesn't look ready at all.
it's a nasty start, but it's one I agree with.
Yeah. And then when you go to the Ravens, Lamar's a must start. Gus Edwards, what's weird about this game, I can see a game where Gus Edwards and Justice Hill both get in the end zone. I can see the Ravens run offense.
Justice Hill's out this week.
Justice Hill's not playing this week.
Nope.
Okay,
They
see?
just ruled him out officially.
Okay, well, I'm glad we have Schiff here, the Ravens fan, to add into it. So, Gus Edwards, for sure a must start. Gus Edwards, you're rolling. Zay Flowers, you're rolling. Mark Andrews, you're rolling. I mean, you can say more. I'm not throwing out Bateman.
No, I mean, okay. Here's the thing with the other Ravens: is if you're in deeper leagues, like 12 man. If you're in a dynasty league, whatever, and you have a deep enough bench to hold on to Rashad Bateman throughout the year, do it. Like I traded for him in dynasty, and obviously I'm going to hold on to him there. I cut him in redraft because he's just not getting the snap percentage you want when there's other receivers who are on the field a lot more. And over the summer, the 3 who worked out together in Florida were Nelson Aguilar, Odell Beckham, and Zay Flowers with Lamar Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
So you're starting to see that in the games. The game-winning touchdown just went to Nelson Aguilar.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying roster Nelson Aguilar, but keep an eye on him.
Yeah, in the last 2, obviously you start Justin Tucker, and if you told me you were going to start the Ravens defense this week, absolutely, I would do that as
I
well.
wouldn't hate it because it's like you said, Gardner Minshew, he's not a bad quarterback. He's mid-tier. I watched their game against the Texans, and he'd make some good throws, and there was one. He kind of goes to make a throw, stops halfway, and then flat-footed, throws the ball halfway to his receiver. He just makes really weird decisions sometimes. It's probably why he's a backup.
Yeah.
And the Ravens are going to probably win that game. But yeah, Michael Pittman and Zach Moss. A sneaky one to watch on the Colts is their tight end, Kylan Granson, I think.
Yeah, it's Granson or Grandison. Yeah, one of those.
Yeah, Granson. He's slow, sneakily working himself up that target tree.
Yeah.
So just keep an eye on him.
Yeah.
Next one, I got Panthers at Seahawks. Seahawks are 5.5 point favorites. Over under is 42.5. Bryce Young's not going to play, so that might be a little better for Panthers pass catchers.
Andy Dalton season.
Yeah, the Red Rifle is back.
Absolutely.
Somehow, still going. Shouts out to him. Actually, not shouts out to him. I hated him when he was on the Bengals, so for obvious reasons. But, this one, it's if you want to start Adam Thielen, Hayden Hurst. I wouldn't start Jonathan Mingo just yet. I love Jonathan Mingo just because he played 98% of snaps. He's a rookie wide receiver. Seeing them play that many in week 2 and just build that rapport with his young quarterback throughout the year, he might really be something. Right now, it's Adam Thielen and Hayden Hurst. You're starting Miles Sanders. If you want to, grab Chuba Hubbard in case of a Miles Sanders injury, just hold on to him. Even in a lot of games, like we said before, they're going to be down a lot. So they're going to be forced to pass in a lot of these situations. And as we saw in the 2-minute drill, at least with Bryce Young in this last game, they dump it off a lot to Chuba Hubbard. They bring Chuba Hubbard in and just dump off. So that's a possibility. And even with Miles Sanders, just the pass catching for the backs is because they get into the backfield so quick, and that's the first option.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really all for the Panthers side of the ball. The Seahawks, on the other hand, I have seen DK Metcalf questionable all week with that rib injury. Not quite sure how that's going to affect him. I think he's going to play. So if he plays, you're obviously starting DK Metcalf. You're
Mm-hmm.
starting Tyler Lockett. Jackson Smith-Njigba, I'm not starting quite yet. I'm definitely holding on to. And then you're starting Ken Walker and Geno Smith. And that's really as simple as it gets.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even have too much comment on that one because it's just those are obvious starts. You're starting any of those guys on the Seahawks without question, and I agree. Smith and Njigba, he's keeping a roster spot on my team for sure. There's no way you're dropping him yet, because I do think he's shown flashes, and as the season continues, he will get integrated more, which isn't the greatest news for Lockett and Metcalf fans. I think it'll affect Lockett more than it'll affect Metcalf. Um, but as it
Yeah.
progresses, I do see Smith and Njigba getting more run out there. And
Yeah.
that,
And I think they're a good offense. So that, like them, kind of like the Lions, I don't have a problem having like the wide receiver 3 in that offense because they're more high powered.
yeah, absolutely. And that takes us to my second to last game here is the Bears and the Chiefs in Kansas City. They're 12.5-point favorites. I mean, Justin Fields had that run last season on my fantasy team where he was just unbelievable. Looked like he could do no wrong. But even while he was doing it, it's not like he was going out there and just passing like crazy. They go
No,
out,
he was averaging like 149 passing yards a game.
and that's what's killed him this year is his inability to run how he ran last year. Justin Fields is getting to a weird point where it's like, people were drafting this guy before a Herbert. Some people were taking him before Lamar, right around Lamar, before Burrow, right around Burrow. That's how high Justin Fields was going. So it's tough for fantasy owners to not start him coming into only week 3. But I mean, depending who's on your waiver wire, and I don't think it's crazy to say it, I feel like you might not start him this week. There might be
No.
other quarterbacks that are safer to get you 15, 20 points at least compared to Fields, where you just don't know at this point.
Yeah, and I have a league that I'm in that I pivoted from. I benched Justin Fields and I picked up Matt Stafford.
Yeah,
I'm starting Matt Stafford this week. I mean, you don't drop Justin Fields, but definitely we're at a point where you're going to have to start pivoting from him based on the matchup. And this Kansas City Chiefs one is disgusting. They held the Jaguars, who are a much better offense, to 9 points. I
yeah.
do not see the Bears scoring much in this game at all.
Yeah, and when you're looking at their position players, Khalil Herbert, Roshan Johnson, if you absolutely have to start Khalil Herbert, then you have to. But I don't like Khalil that much. I don't like Roshan, obviously. He's even the backup. DJ Moore, I feel like you have to start just because it's DJ Moore. You drafted him so early. You probably don't have the depth to just not start DJ Moore. But I don't even like his matchup that much. I don't like Claypool. I don't like Mooney. Cole Kmet, just because the tight end room or the tight ends around the league have been so hit or miss. I mean, if you want to absolutely roll the dice on there, I would do it, but there's probably even better options there.
Yeah, like I don't hate the Cole Kmet start if you have to make it this week because it's like he's open over the middle of the field and Justin Fields is just gonna have to like dump it off to him.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like even if you can pivot off DJ Moore this week, I would because it's just this is not gonna be a good week for the
No,
Bears.
I don't think so. And then the Chiefs, you have your just obvious, don't even need to say it. Mahomes and Kelsey obviously starting. Pacheco? Pacheco in?
If
Is
he plays, I
Pacheco out?
start him.
Yeah.
I don't know. If he plays, I start him. If he doesn't play, I'm staying away from the Chiefs' backfield, honestly.
Yeah. And it's almost the same. I mean, their wide receiver room, realistically, I'm probably staying away from anyone in that. Like, Sky Moore has shown flashes. Kadarius Toney, I don't even want to get into Kadarius Toney, but Sky Moore has shown flashes. Justin Watson has these 2 catches a game for 45 yards, but I don't feel safe with anyone in the Chiefs receiving room to actually, start them.
No, there's no consistency. It's like we say every week. Their like mantra is death by 1,000 cuts, plus
Mm-hmm.
Travis Kelce,
Yeah.
and it's just you can't count on anything. It was funny. I saw a tweet today. It was a picture of the blue medical tent and saying, "Oh, Kadarius Toney put his house on Zillow."
Yeah, I mean, that's
It's like,
that's
dude,
how
he's
it's
literally.
been.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, there's not you could look forward to that side like that. That's one of those receiver rooms. Like if you have Sky Moore, Rashi Rice, Kadarius Toney, one of them in a best ball, great. If you
Yeah.
have to choose to start them every week, not so great.
Yeah.
And that leads me into my last one: the Cowboys at the Cardinals. I genuinely don't think there's too much to say about this. You're starting CeeDee Lamb. If you have Brandon Cooks, he's healthy now, so he should be a good start this week. Not starting Gallup. Jake Ferguson is an interesting start. He has the most red zone targets in the league
I
right
like
now.
him getting in the end zone this week. I like
Through
him.
2 games, I mean, he's a red zone target. Dak's shown, and it's a 2 week sample size, but I still like that they're targeting him in the red zone.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then obviously Tony Pollard. You're playing Tony Pollard every single week. Dak Prescott this week, I don't hate. The only thing that could make it a bad week for Dak is if it's kind of like week 1, where they get it to the point where they don't have to do anything on offense.
Yep.
That's the only thing that scares me. The Arizona Cardinals have shown that their offense is not the worst in the NFL. With Josh Dobbs, they're still able to move the ball. I do not think James Conner is going to have a good week.
Mm-mm.
The Cowboys' run defense is stellar. Honestly, I don't know how many points they're going to be able to put up just because, unlike, the first 2 weeks and week 1, Washington didn't have Chase Young. The Cowboys got Micah Parsons this week. So it could get nasty fast. And that's the only thing that scares me about the Cowboys' skill players for fantasy this week. CD was still able to get his in week 1 to a degree. Even when they beat the Giants 40-0, week 2 he went off. That's why I like CD every week. I think he'll still get targets. But on the Arizona side of the ball,
If you were going to start one person, I feel like the only person you could possibly start is probably James Conner. But even that, I do not like the matchup at all. But if,
for
you're super
him,
thin at running back, maybe Zach Ertz. Maybe.
yeah, the Zach Ertz start I don't hate this week. I don't hate it if you have to start Hollywood Brown because he's your,
And also
wide receiver
Diggs
3
going down.
probably. And Diggs going down. And so they'll probably have Stephon Gilmore on him. And that matched up with Michael Parsons going after Josh Dobbs could result in a bad day. But they're
Yeah.
not going to they're not going to be able to run the ball and they're going to throw it. So it's like he's one of the few reliable pass catchers out there.
Yeah. And 2 more, I'd say, must starts. Cowboys rookie kicker,
Brandon
Brandon Audrey.
up.
You have
Hell
to
yeah.
start him. And obviously, the Cowboys defense you are rolling out there. I mean, obviously.
Oh, yeah. If you're not starting on defense, then why did you draft them?
Yeah.
Like they're gonna get sacks against every team. I'm not really too worried about how many points any team's gonna put up against them, just because Micah Parsons is on like an MVP caliber type season, which is insane.
Yeah. And then, very last game, Sunday Night Football. Pittsburgh Steelers come to Las Vegas to play the Raiders. Raiders 2.5-point favorites, which really mean that the Steelers are a half-point favorite. If you didn't know, the home team always gets 3 points favored their way. So the Steelers are technically the favorite. This one I don't even know how to feel about, and I don't even know how to give a real. I mean, the Raiders secondary especially is horrific, as always. Kenny Pickett hasn't looked great. I'm not starting Kenny Pickett, but
No.
George Pickens absolutely starting. It pains me to say, Allen Robinson depends. If you're in a 12-man and your wide receiver room's thin and you have to start him, I wouldn't absolutely hate it. But I'm staying away from Allen Robinson. Calvin Austin could burn the Raiders deep. There's a possibility of that happening. Very high possibility. Again, probably wouldn't start him. Freiermuth? This could be a week where Freiermuth bounces back. Realistically, this could be the
It
week.
could. I mean, both tight ends kind of burned the Raiders last week.
Mm-hmm.
That's where one place they're susceptible. It's possible. Muth could have a week this week.
Yeah, I
It's
don't
just
see Najee having a good week, but I see Jalen Warren having a good week. Jalen Warren out the backfield. The Raiders do not like covering the running back out the backfield. That dude is going to be open in the flat, and he's going to get 8-yard receptions, and I'm going to be screaming at the TV the whole fucking game because he's going to be open.
Yeah, I think Najee's only pop this week is if he falls into the. If you
Yeah.
have Najee, I mean, let's be real. If you have Najee Harris with the running back like outlook right now, you're probably forced into starting him.
Yeah.
You probably don't have much of a choice.
Yeah.
But this is one week that I don't feel so disgusting about it because there probably will be an opportunity for him to fall into the end zone. He's going to be slow as ever, but if it's going to happen, it could happen this week. And if it does, you better trade him.
Yeah. And then
if it does, make your move all you can, baby.
Absolutely. And going to the Raiders side, you're not starting Jimmy G. You have to start Josh Jacobs still, obviously. You absolutely have to start Josh Jacobs. You're starting Devontae Adams. Honestly, I'm starting Jacoby Myers. Even if it's at the flex, with how much he was used and everything, I'm starting Jacoby Myers. And outside of that, obviously, Hunter Renfro's not even rostered at this point.
No.
Michael Mayer's not rostered at this point. Austin Hooper's obviously not rostered. I'm starting Daniel Carlson, and I'm looking at the Steelers' defense. I'm thinking about starting the Steelers' defense.
And I mean, just after watching last week, there was it was like a screen. The one that got intercepted.
Mm-hmm.
There was no reason why Ed Oliver should have gotten through that fast.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're not even the thing you do on a screen, you have to put hands on the defensive lineman before you move up to the net. The hell, they didn't even put hands on it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just play. It's like, and that's a guy that we know. You get to Jimmy G, he's gonna take the sack.
Yeah.
TJ Watt looked like a man on a mission last week.
Mm-hmm.
I feel he's going to be coming out like that. It's going to be scary hours in the pocket if they can't protect Jimmy G. So, yeah, the Steelers' defense is a good start this week.
Yeah, absolutely. But, I mean, that was our last game. That's all I had. Did you have anything more to add to the Steelers-Raiders?
No, that'll about do it, guys. Check back in with us on Monday for more reps with the first team.
Appreciate you guys tuning in, especially for our first episode. And as I said earlier, if you have any questions, you want any opinions on fantasy, start, sit, just questions, any advice on anything, leave it in the comments. We'll definitely get it answered before Sunday. Appreciate you guys tuning in.
Don't forget to drop a like and sub.
Yes, sir.